everyone. This is Chair Bob Hussein-Young. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is 1:31 p.m. And Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Yes. Desmond?
Here.
Frost?
Here.
Yetta? Harris? Kozlowski?
Here.
Kennedy? Miller? Natoli? Sandu?
Miller is here.
Chenier?
Here.
Cerna?
Here.
Spees?
Present.
Terry? Valenzuela? Vang?
Here.
Singh Allen?
Here.
And I'm seeing Miller, but I didn't hear him speak. Are you here, Miller?
Sandu here.
Oh,
Here.
Sandu?
Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I can hear you now. And Supervisor Natoli is in chambers now.
And Director Sandu is present as well.
Yes, I got his attendance there, and you do have a quorum.
All right, very good. Then at this time, we'll, if we can please join for the Pledge of Allegiance. And the clerk, would you please lead us?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you.
And I can go
And
on
with
with
the-
the announcements if you like.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes. In compliance with directives for the county, state, and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, this meeting is live streamed and closed to in-person public participation. Temporary procedures are subject to change pursuant to guidelines related to social distancing and minimizing person-to-person contact. To make a verbal comment at today's meeting, dial 916-875-2500 and follow the prompts to be placed in queue for a specific agenda item or off-agenda matter. When the chair opens public comment for a specific agenda item or off-agenda matter, callers will be transferred from the queue into the meeting to make a verbal comment. Written comments are always accepted. Send your email comment to boardclerk@saccounty.net, and your comment will be routed to the board and filed in the record. This meeting of the Sacramento Transportation Authority is cablecast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T UVerse cable systems. This meeting is closed captioned and live streamed at metro14live.saccounty.gov. Today's meeting will replay Sunday, March 13th at 2 p.m. on Channel 14. This meeting can also be viewed at youtube.com/metrocable14. And that concludes my announcements.
All right, thank you. And may I ask the clerk if there are any comments from the public regarding matters not on the agenda?
I do not see any verbal public comments at this time for item number 1.
All right, very good. Then we will move on to our executive director's report.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Board. Just like to update on the return to person with the updates of the statewide mandates regarding in-person meetings. STA is working with the clerk's office to look to resume meetings in person within the Sacramento County Chambers sometime this spring. On Thursday, February 24th, STA staff were notified that a proposed Sacramento County Transportation Initiative was now available for viewing online at www.movesac.org. Staff is unaware of any status of the initiative beyond the information provided on the website, but we are currently reviewing the proposed initiative to determine any potential impacts to the STA and the governing board in regard to implementation, and are planning on presenting these findings at the April board meeting. Moving on to the capital improvement program. Initializing in the summer of 2020, the staff has been working actively with the 5 remaining member agencies eligible for capital improvement funds. Agencies are the county, the city of Sacramento, city of Citrus Heights, Caltrans, and the Capital Southeast Connector. The targeted allocations were established at that time, and we are actively working closely with staff on project listings, revenues, and developing an allocation program based upon cash flows. We have updated our targeted allocations based upon the new projected revenue, and we estimate bringing the new program to the board or the updated program to the board in the spring. In late summer of 2021, the California Transportation Commission announced its third round of the local partnership program. It has been identified or finalized that it will be a 2-year, $200 million program, 60% of the funds distributed formulaically and 40% via competitive grants. So the competitive program is available to only those of us that are that have a dedicated fee for transportation for impact fees, and the formulaic is for anyone with a taxpayer-approved tax, toll, or fee. CTC is still conducting a series of workshops to finalize their program, and they anticipate releasing the policy in August of 2022, as well as the call for projects. STA is actively working with member agencies to discuss the competitive and formulaic strategies for the next round of funding, and we anticipate bringing a project ranking strategy before the board in the spring. We'll continue to actively update the board as the process continues. And finally, staff are still actively working to update the website and the logo for STA, and we anticipate bringing that before the board the first fiscal quarter of next year. And Chair, that concludes my report.
All right, thank you for your report there. Any questions or comments from the board? I'm not seeing a hand raised.
I do not see any hand raises, and Supervisor Natoli does not have any comments, and I am not seeing any verbal public comment waiting in queue for item number 2.
All right, very good. Then we will move on to our consent calendar. Are there any members who want to remove any item from the consent calendar?
I do not see any hand raises at this time, and there is no hand raised from Supervisor Natoli.
All right, very good. Then I'd like to call for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll move, Chair.
Second, Desmond.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Can you please call the roll?
Yes, and I'm sorry, and that motion was it Vang or Valenzuela?
Valenzuela.
Thank you. Desmond?
Aye.
Frost?
Aye.
Guerra? Harris? Kozlowski?
Yes.
Kennedy? Miller?
Yes.
Natoli?
Aye.
Sandhu?
Aye.
Chenier?
Aye.
Cerna?
Aye.
Spees?
Aye.
Terry? Valenzuela?
Yes.
And Vang?
Yes.
And Singh Allen?
Yes.
And that motion carries.
All right, next item, please.
And I'm sorry, I also wanted to say for the record that there were no public comments for consent items 3 through 8.
Very good. So noted. Our next item.
So item number 9 is refunding the 2012 series fixed rate bonds informational presentation, contract with Nosman for disclosure services, contract with Oric for bond legal counsel.
All right,
All right. Thank you.
welcome.
Yeah, this is Tim Jones. Glad to be here today. Thank you for your time, members of the board. I wanted to take this opportunity, since many of you are new to the board, to share some information about the authority's debt program so that you have some context for recommendations that are being made by staff. One of the financing options that the board acted on early in the Measure A program was to issue debt to advance projects approved by voters in 2004. By the time the sales tax extension began in 2009, there were many shovel-ready projects. Therefore, 3 series of 30-year variable interest rate bonds totaling $318.3 million were issued. Since variable interest rate bonds are subject to fluctuations in federal interest rates, known as interest rate risk, the bonds have been hedged with interest rate swaps that effectively fix the interest rate. Additionally, the variable rate bonds are supported by remarketing, agent agreements, and liquidity facilities. In 2012, an additional debt issuance in the amount of $53.4 million was approved by the board to continue to advance projects throughout the region. These bonds have a 15-year maturity. The authority has been paying down the principal on them, so the outstanding amount currently stands at $30.4 million. These bonds were issued at a fixed rate, eliminating the need for interest rate swaps, remarketing agreements, or liquidity facilities. However, STA staff regularly work with the authority's financial advisory team to assess market conditions to identify opportunities to reduce debt service costs. In 2012, when the fixed rate debt was issued, the indenture required that a debt service reserve fund be established. That fund currently holds $5.6 million, which will become available in October 2022. To release the funds, the bonds need to be refunded. All the funding, less issuance costs, will go to the authority's capital improvement program, which is in desperate need of cash. Additionally, since federal interest rates are very low, we anticipate saving about $2 million in financing costs, all of which benefit the capital improvement program. Given the savings, staff recommend that the bonds be refunded to benefit from the release of the debt reserve funds and reduce financing costs. Staff also recommends the board approve the consulting contracts for needed legal services to carry out this transaction. Orrick and Nossaman have worked with the authority for many years and are trusted partners vested in the authority's best interests. With us today is the authority's financial advisor, Peter Schellenberger. He's the managing director with PFM Financial Advisors. Peter and his team have worked with the authority since the inception of its debt program. So today, Peter will provide a market update and additional context for the authority's debt program. And after his presentation, we would be happy to answer any questions the board members have. Peter, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tim, and good afternoon, Chair and members of the board.
Good afternoon. And Peter, when you want the slides to change, just let us know.
Oh, thanks so much. As Tim noted, I am with PFM Financial Advisors. When we go to the office, I work out of the San Francisco office, coming to you from Oakland at the moment. So good to be remotely with everybody. And we can advance to the next slide. Again, as Tim noted, this is just an informational item. And I just wanted to give you the markets, some market information as to where interest rates are, and then talk about the refunding of the potential refunding of the 2012 bonds for savings and the release of the reserve fund. We can move ahead and to the next. First few slides here, just look at, I realize not everybody is looking at bond yield curves every day. So I'll just take a minute to describe what we're looking at here. Here we're looking at three curves, 3 different points in time, and each curve has a 1-year maturity all the way through a 3-year maturity, and those 1 through 30-year maturities. And those years denote what an investor would receive in today's bond market, or the related dates here, what the investor would receive in terms of return on investment, otherwise known as the interest rate or a yield. And so that yellow curve up top is today's, at least as of March 4th, the current yield curve or interest rates. And we compare that to where we were last year at this time in 2021. And so just a couple of takeaways. If you look at the column, the AAA MMD, which stands for Municipal Market Data, we could look at the actual rates today. So a 1-year yield or a 1-year interest rate is 0.84%. And a year ago at this time, the Federal Reserve during the pandemic, in the hopes of keeping the economy moving along, kept short-term rates very, very low. And so we were close to zero. And so we have seen interest rates move up on the short end of the curve quite a bit. Today, the 1 year is 0.84%. You go out 5 years and an investor would receive an annual rate of return of 1.34% on a high grade tax exempt municipal bond, which is what the authority issues, all the way out to 30 years, just over 2%. So 2% is a low number, especially historically speaking. And so the takeaway here is we have seen interest rates remain low, and they remain low from a historical perspective. We are seeing increased rates, particularly on the short end, and the Federal Reserve has indicated they will increase the Fed funds rate probably 4 or 5 times this year in hopes of controlling inflation. And so that's where we see most of the movement on the short end of the curve, the first 5 to 10 years. So that's a primary takeaway. Still very good rate environment, but we are seeing rates increase. And we can go to the next page. Historically, I'll just point you to the green curve, which is a couple days earlier than what I just showed you, with the interest rates as of February 28th, 2022, and then the really 40-year historical average. So if you look at the 10-year, just as a point of reference, current rate is about 1.58%. You compare that to the 40-year average of 4.44%, still a very low interest rate environment, historically speaking. And we can go to the next page. This focuses on the great deal of interest rate movement or volatility going back a year ago. And we just choose 4 yields: the US Treasury, which is a taxable rate on the left, as well as the tax exempt index called the AAA MMD rate. And we look at a 1-year, a 5-year, a 10-year, and a 30-year spot rate. They've been very much up and down, and you could see the spike since December. That's when inflationary concerns really kicked in, and so we could see interest rates kicking up as of December. But you could also see some points where they also come back. So just a lot of volatility within the last year. And we can go to the next page. Here's an interest rate forecast. Bloomberg surveys a group of economists, and they prepare with their responses a forecast. So this is interesting to get their sense of where they think interest rates are moving. This is their crystal ball. Looking at that 10-year US Treasury, current rate was 1.77%. They expect that by the end of this year to go up just a little bit to over 2%. You look out at the if you look at the quarter 4 for 2022, end of this year, about 2.28% is the expected increase, and then slowly increasing through the 4th quarter of next calendar year, 2023, to 2.6%. Most of the movement is happening at that bottom row, the federal funds rate, which is currently 0. But we expect them to increase this month in March. And if you look through the end of calendar year 2022, we're going to go from 0 up to about 1.3% by the end of the year, and then pushing 2% by the end of next year. So that's where most of the rate increase will happen at the short end of the curve. And we can look at the next page. This is the last page of the market. This just shows municipal bond supply, the amount of bonds being sold from issuers like yourself. This looks at 2021, where there was 484 billion of debt. 2021, 475 billion of bonds sold throughout the year, just a little bit lower than the prior year of 2020. There was a great deal of debt issuance because of the low interest rates. This year, there will still probably be north of 450 billion issued, but we don't expect the same amount of supply being sold. Investors are attracted to high-grade credits, and you are almost at the AAA level. It's the highest possible level. The authorities' bonds are rated AA+ by S&P and AA+ by Fitch. So we'll continue to push to get that last notch, the AAA, which is very sort of elite territory, but you are considered a very high-grade credit, and investors do flock to and purchase high-grade bonds such as yours, and that's the chart to the right. Whenever you see blue, there's a net inflow into the municipal bond world from investors. And in the last couple of weeks, we've seen some red. We've seen investors liquidating their position with a lot of the stock market volatility, and a little less cash purchasing municipal bonds, which really won't impact us or you because of your high grade and your strong credit, but just good to keep an eye on supply and demand here. And that's it for the market. I'm happy to answer questions before we look at your specific portfolio. Okay.
Thank you for that. Were there any questions? Not seeing any, you can proceed.
Thank
No,
you.
I'm not seeing any hand raises here, and Director Natoli does not have is not in queue to speak.
Okay, we'll really focus on the business at hand. Thanks so much for indulging me through the market update, and then we'll go to the next page. with content on it. The next, and here's the authority's outstanding bond obligations that Tim just described. The total amount outstanding is 348.7 million. Much of that goes out to the final year of 2038 of the measure. The majority of that, 318 million, is currently in variable rate form. However, it is hedged with interest rate swaps, and that does create essentially a fixed rate. And so if you look down below where there is the swaps and the authority pays, you're paying that 3.73, 3.66%. It's kind of your base interest cost on those interest rate swaps. So as Tim pointed out, those are effectively what we call a synthetic fixed rate. We created a fixed rate with the use of variable rate combined with a hedged instrument or a swap. The 2012s that you will see up top in the top, that is what we're focused on. It has a short final maturity through 2027. So really it's a 5-year final maturity. We're not proposing to extend that. We're just talking about refunding those outstanding bonds that are currently outstanding in the amount of 30 million and refunding those at lower rates for savings because they are now callable. So we could look to the next page. Here's the debt service schedule for your outstanding debt portfolio. The far column to the second to right column, the total existing debt service. The authority is expected to pay about 19 million annually from total sales tax revenues through 2028. And then the variable rate bonds begin to repay the principal. And so there's a known step up, sort of a step up in 2029, up to 35 million, 36 million in 2030. And that continues through the end of the measure of 2039. And what we do in this industry is do a very simple ratio of prior year sales tax revenues, which was 153 million, just over, and compare that to the debt service that we lay out here. And so that's the debt service coverage ratio, simply total revenues over debt service. And for every, we have a ratio of 8.19 and it drops to 4.25 there, which goes to say for every dollar of debt service that is due in 2022, for example, there's $8.06 of sales tax collected. That's very high coverage. That's what keeps you in that AA+, and we will push to argue for the AAA with that type of coverage. It drops to $4.25 once the interest rate swaps and the variable rate begins to amortize. I see a question. I'll pause there.
Yes, I do see one hand raised from Director Frost.
Thank you. I just had a question about the swaps.
Yes.
Are the swaps, the cost for the swap fixed for the life of that bond until you retire it, or can that be subject to change in the event of changing markets or inflation?
That's a really good question. And if you go back a page, thank you. The interest rates the authority pays, those interest rates established to 3.73 and to 3.66%, those are established for the life of the swap, which goes out through 2038. So those do not change. The variable rate on the bonds that are attached to the swap, they do go up and down. But the exposure to the authority is very, very low, even as those variable rates go up, because you, as part of the swap construct, you receive a variable rate payment from the commercial bank that you've entered into the swap with. So whatever you pay on the variable rate bonds is offset by your receipts received from that commercial bank. So in essence, no, there's very little fluctuation to the payments you make on these interest rate swaps.
But if we did decide to retire it or sell it to, to position in a different way, the swap could be a different cost at a different time, basically.
You're exactly right. The interest rate swaps do have what they call a mark-to-market value. And so if the authority says, I'd like to get out of these swaps today, then we do have to look at the current market conditions and value these swaps as an asset. And that is at the far right column, the current market valuation. So if the authority said, I'd like to make these swaps go away and I'll pay the counterparties, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, or JP Morgan, the amount that you would pay the counterparties in today's market would be 90 million to terminate the swaps and then go out and fix them out in a fixed rate bond market. And so that valuation, the mark-to-market valuation, does fluctuate, and it does go up and down with interest rate changes. So sometimes it's higher than that, sometimes it's lower than that.
So, which probably explains why we're staying with variable.
You're right. Economically, it does not pencil to take out the swaps. I will briefly mention that what we look at when we terminate the swaps, really the debt service you pay on the swaps versus the debt service you could pay under a fixed rate structure. And then you account for the payment to the counterparties of the 90 million. That's a large number on the $318 million of swaps. But I will tell you this, you're fairly close. You are fairly close to being able to go out to the bond market, borrow the funds to terminate the swap, take out the variable rate, and your debt service on the new fixed rate bonds, call them the 2022 swap takeout bonds, would be pretty close to what you're paying through the life, expected to pay through the life of the swaps. So even though there's a large mark to market, there is, but interest rates are also very low. So that helps subsidize that mark to market. So you don't want to look, my point being, you don't want to look just at the mark to market valuation. You want to look at what you would refund it with and what the payment structure on that refunding would be. And that's what I say. We've looked at that and it doesn't quite pencil. The new debt service would be a little higher than the existing debt service under the swaps.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. I hope that was.
It was helpful.
And we could go to page 12. Thank you. Here's a pictorial representation, a graphical representation of that last debt service coverage chart. And you can see the bar up to the top is fiscal year 21 revenues. The good news is your revenues have really grown substantially through the pandemic, as we've seen elsewhere. For instance, in San Diego, it's grown substantially. We work with San Bernardino, that grew 24% in 2021. In San Francisco Bay Area, Santa Clara, it's generally flat. There has been an exodus and there's been less consumption in the Bay Area, but you're another county that's really grown in terms of sales tax revenues. So with that, more capacity, stronger coverage, and the results is very strong debt service coverage and metrics here. So I'll go to the next page, if you will. To the proposal of refunding the 2012 bonds. Back in 2012, as virtually every issuer in the tax-exempt municipal bond market does, you issue bonds, 20-year bonds, 30-year bonds, and you put a call structure, a 10-year call, which simply means after 10 years after the issuance of those bonds, you have the right to call those bonds in without any charge. And if interest rates are more attractive, then you can call them in and refinance those at the new prevailing rates. And so that's what you did in 2012. There was a 10-year call put on, and here we are 10 years later. So the proposal is to exercise that call option and refund those at lower rates today. I won't go through each of the assumptions here, but we are using current rates. We're putting in a 20 basis point or 0.2% cushion because we realize rates continue to rise a little bit. We're not extending the final maturity. This would still be a 5-year 2027 final maturity. And then that last bullet is important. Not only do you save the interest costs on the 2012 bonds by getting lower interest rates, but we would restructure the documents and release the debt service reserve fund. That reserve fund, back in 2012, you issued an additional $5.5 million of bonds approximately to put into a reserve fund for the benefit of investors. So if sales tax revenue somehow came up short, you could draw on this reserve fund and they have great comfort that they would always get paid. But we just looked at coverage, and coverage is remarkably strong. So that by itself will maintain your very high ratings and give investors comfort. And so we can now release that reserve fund. So that's the secondary benefit here. And if we could go to the next page. Here's the results. under current market conditions, you would issue about $23.8 million of 2022 bonds to refund your existing 2012 bonds that are outstanding in that amount of $25.9 million. So you'd have a little less outstanding. Your savings there, the total in terms of cash flow, current market would be about 2.7 million, and that's through 2027. And on a discounted present value basis, 2.2%. We would borrow at a rate of about 1.5% because it's so short. It's a 5-year final maturity. We would try to issue these fairly quickly because we realized the Federal Reserve is going to increase rates throughout the year. So the goal would be to try to issue the new refunding bonds by June. We would thereby fund an escrow. So you see the escrow deposit. We would put the new bonds in escrow for 90 days. And then on the call date for the 2012 bond, on October 1st, 2022, we would call the prior 2012 bonds, release the escrow, and that escrow. So that escrow is a short-lived escrow. It's just going to be around for 90 days. But upon closing in June or July 1st, really, you would release the debt service reserve fund of 5.2 million that Tim referred to. That would be available for projects. And you'd also save about $2.7 million in cash flow over the next 5 years. So that's the proposal. I'll pause here before I talk about the final slide on next steps to see if there's any questions on the numbers or the proposal.
Any questions from directors?
I do not see any hand raises in the Zoom, and Director Natoli is not in the queue to speak.
Thank you.
And the last slide is next steps. This is purely informational. Assuming you would want to move forward and instruct the team to move forward, this would be the month to Tim's recommendation would be to engage the legal and the underwriting team. We'd bring an investment bank on board to help sell the bonds, underwrite the bonds. You'd meet with rating agencies in April with S&P and Fitch. It's good to get your name back in front of them with how strong your performance on sales tax has been. So we'll push for a rating upgrade if we can get to that AAA. It's a challenge, but we've got some metrics to support our argument. That'll happen in April. We'll come back to the board in May to present documents, and that would be an action item for your review and approval. If approved, we would then price the bonds in May. We would close on July 1st, and then the reserve fund would be released upon close. The new 22 bonds would be in existence. The 2012 bonds would be defeased via the escrow, and in October, the 2012 bonds would then be called, and they would no longer exist. So that's the next steps through October of this year. And with that, I appreciate your time. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Peter. We have Tim coming back. You're on mute. 2 years later, and we still have this not figured out. I do it all the time.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for your questions. I hope that gives you some comfort that the authority is actively assessing its debt program. As you can see, there's a lot of money out there. And with help from PFM and our extended financial advisory team, we monitor that very closely and take advantage of market conditions as they arise. So the ask for today is twofold or threefold, depending on how you look at it. One is that we'd like to move forward if the authority approves to do so with the proposed transaction. And then secondly, we would like the authority to approve consulting contracts for ORIC and for NASAMIN, a legal team that we will need to move forward with the transaction. So if there are any questions, we'd like to continue that dialogue. And if not, we would ask that the board, we recommend that the board approve those items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I see Director Kozlowski's hand raised.
Yeah, I apologize for asking the kind of dumbest of all questions, but could you just go back over what we expect the costs to do these transactions are and what the upside is in doing the transaction?
Yeah, so the overall benefit is sort of two components: the $5.6 million in reserve funds that will be released, plus $2+ million in interest rate savings, for a total of $7.6 million conservatively. And the cost to execute the transaction that we propose in total is estimated to be $400,000. So then the net benefit to the authority and its capital improvement program would be roughly $7.2 million.
The reserve fund being released, that's just getting it released earlier, right? That's not really additional revenue, is it?
Well, for us, it's new revenue. It's money that we financed back in 2012 that we have not had access to.
Right.
And that is a part of the refunding effort. We need to refund to release that. And in addition to the refunding, we're going to benefit from the low interest rate market.
So I get that. It seems beneficial regardless of my question, but the reserve fund would naturally become released at the end of the term, right? So in 2027, it would become available. So we're getting access to it sooner, but it's not really new revenue per se.
Yeah, that's why we do not characterize it as savings. You're right. We don't call it. It's a release of a cash flow that benefits the program earlier. And then to add to your point, Tim, the cost of issuance, when we showed the debt service savings of about 2.7 million on a cash basis, 2.2 on a discount, that is already net of the 400,000.
Oh, okay. All right, very good. Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that was clear in my head.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kozlowski. Any other questions from our directors? Don't see any hands raised.
Yes, I do not see any hand raises at this time in Zoom, and Director Natoli is not in queue to speak.
Very good. Any questions from the public?
I do not see any public comment for item number 9, verbal public comment.
Move approval, Frost.
Thank you. We have a motion.
I'll second Kozlowski.
All right, thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Desmond?
Aye.
Frost?
Aye.
Guerra? Harris? Kozlowski?
Yes.
Kennedy? Miller?
Yes.
Natoli?
Aye.
Sandhu?
Aye.
Chenier?
Aye.
Cerna?
Aye.
Spees?
Aye.
Terry? Valenzuela?
Yes.
Bang?
Yes.
And Singh Allen.
Yes,
And your motion carries.
thank you very much. We will go on to our next item, please.
Okay, so next item is going to be the Smart Growth Incentive Program expenditure contracts.
Very
Okay, thank
good.
you.
Welcome back.
Thank you. As part of the sales tax measure voters approved in 2004, the Smart Growth Incentive Program, referred to as the SGIP, was envisioned to improve mobility throughout the region using development fee dollars. The SGIP is designed to complement SACOG's Community Design Grant Program by providing local money to leverage state and federal funds. The expenditure plan contained in the ordinance requires that 15% of the development fees be utilized for the SGIP. In October 2020, the STA board approved a strategy that committed $5.5 million to the SGIP program for the current funding cycle. Subsequently, SACOG incorporated the local funding into its Community Design Grant Program. This funding was leveraged to generate commitments from the state and federal governments. In total, the amount is $31 million for the current cycle. When this funding is combined with $5 million from the SGIP for the Capital Southeast Connector, which was approved by the STA board in June 2021, STA fulfills the 15% commitment from the program inception through June of 2022. Now that the funding has been identified and has been programmed, the contracts attached will set into motion construction projects throughout the region that will improve mobility, in particular for bikes and pedestrians. At this time, I would invite any questions you may have about the program or the specifics of the contracts.
All right, are there any questions from directors?
I do not see any hand raises in the Zoom, and Director Natoli is not queued to speak.
And any public comments?
There are currently no public comments for item number 10.
And
All right.
When motion for approval of the contracts, please.
May we get a motion?
Totally move.
We have a
Second.
motion
Yes, we got a motion from Director Natoli.
Second,
the sec-
Frost.
and a second from Director Frost. Can you please call the roll?
Yes. Desmond,
Aye.
Frost,
Aye.
Kozlowski,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Natoli,
Aye.
Sandhu,
Aye.
Chenier. I'm sorry, was that I? Chenier?
Aye.
Cerna,
Aye.
Spees,
Aye.
Valenzuela,
Yes.
and Vang,
Yes.
and Sing Allen.
Yes,
And your motion carries.
thank you very much. Can we go on to our next item?
Item number 11 is Sacramento Abandoned Vehicle Abatement Program Renewal Update.
All right, welcome, Ms. Dole.
Thank you, and thank you for listening to my update this afternoon. I'm excited about this update. So the legislative bill, unfortunately, staff did meet with Senator Pan and Assemblymember Fong's offices, and both offices ultimately chose not to support an AVA bill due to limited capacity of their already very large agendas and a conflict with previous legislative initiatives. Senator Pan's office did take the time to submit the AVA bill proposal to the legislative legal department, who drafted an unbacked bill for our use on future legislative opportunities. Unfortunately, at this time, staff has exhausted all leads for possible legislative action. If anything should arise, we would update you. We would look into it and then update you. For the really exciting news, staff is pleased to report the proposed tax measure met the first approval requirements of a 2/3 vote by the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors, and a majority of the cities having a majority of the incorporated population with the county. At the time of this report, we were finalizing all the documentation to submit to the County of Sacramento Elections Office, which had a deadline of tomorrow, but we were able to get all the documents in and finalized last Friday. And today we received the notice of publication of the measure that will be put out to the public, and I will post to the STA website after this meeting. We also got our letter, our major letter, which is letter C. So moving forward, we'll call it Measure C. Additionally, for the public education and outreach, the FSP Public Affairs contract for SASVA Public Education and Outreach was approved at the January meeting, and staff and the FSB team quickly began planning best options for creating program awareness and education, including a strategic timeline, messaging, media design, including digital, outdoor, and print, and designated informational webpage. Item 12 of this agenda is an FSB presentation of the update and the completed work to date. And that concludes this report.
Thank you. I see the hand raised from Co-Chair Desmond.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Jennifer. Do you have a copy of the language that Ledge Council had drafted for Pan's office?
Yeah, I can send that out to the board.
Okay, great. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from directors? Any
I do
public
not-
comments?
There are currently no public comments for item number 11.
All right, thank you. This is just a receive and file, so there is no action needed. With that, we'll move on to our next item.
Item number 12 is Sacramento Abandoned Vehicle Abatement Program Public Education and Outreach Status Report.
All right,
I'll take
welcome.
a
Andrew
quick-
Fields. Yes,
Sorry. I'll take a quick opportunity to introduce the FSP Public Affairs lead on this, which is Andy
Perfect.
Fields.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and he'll start his presentation.
Thank you. With permission, Madam Chair. Good to be back before all of you again today. Happy to be presenting about the start of our public education program for the SAVSA initiative. I should say before we start, we're kind of in a unique position to where we know that there's a ballot initiative that is going to be, on the ballot in June. But I should say this is not, we being a public agency, we being doing outreach on behalf of a public agency, this campaign is not advocating for votes one way or the other. This campaign is strictly about educating the public about the SAVSA program, and then if they choose to support the SAVSA program at the ballot box, that's independent of what we're trying to do here with the public education strategy. So I want to get that out. So when I talk about campaign, we're talking about public education campaign, public affairs campaign, not a political campaign where we're advocating votes yes or no either way. So just get that out of the way. Can we go to the next slide? Terrific. So we've got kind of a 3-phase plan of attack that we've discussed with STA staff, and we're here to present kind of the first phase of that program. The first phase is we're going to create a website with infographics and complete messaging. We look at all the ways of contacting people within the county to educate them about the program. You have digital advertising, outdoor advertising, and direct mail. The program doesn't have the funding necessary to mail direct to everybody in the county. It's just cost prohibitive, and so we're looking at alternative means to get the public education accomplished, and that is, think about the real estate that is occupied by either a digital message or an outdoor advertising message is relatively small. So the thinking here is that the best way to get people to understand about the program, what it does, and what it accomplishes, what it costs, et cetera, is to put all that information on the website in a most attractive way possible, easy to understand way possible. So really, that's what we have done. We've created a website. We'll show you a mock-up of that in a moment. We've created a website where really the messaging is about the cost to the Sacramento citizen, the ROI, the benefit that they get from it. What exactly the SAVSA program does. We know that not a whole lot of people know about SAVSA, but the more they know about it, the more they know about the program, the more likely they are to have positive feelings about the program. So in order to get people to the website, right, we're creating a really nice website so that people, when they get there, they see the SAVSA and they like it. But we got to get the people there first. So in order to do that, we're going to utilize a number of different methods to drive them to the website. The first is outdoor advertising, and so this is going to be a billboard campaign that's going to go up around Sacramento. For lack of a better term, we're calling it a mystery campaign. Because of the kind of unique situation that we're in, we're taking a different tack than other kind of transportation messaging. So we're going out on a little bit of a limb here. It's a little bit of a less traditional program. But what we want to do is we want to create some mystery around SAVSA so that people say, oh, okay, I don't know what that is, but I want to visit the website and learn more about it. We'll show you mock-ups of the billboard and what we mean for the mystery campaign in a little bit. What's great about utilizing the electronic billboards in this capacity is that through Clear Channel, who put up the billboards, we get geotagged retargeting data, which means that every driver that passes one of those billboards, their mobile device gets pinged and that IP address gets recorded, so that then we can redirect future messaging through digital means, whether that's paid advertising on social media, boosted posts, or direct digital advertising on any kind of websites, premium websites, pre-roll or any of the like. But it collects that information so that everybody who passes the website, we can then retarget so they get even more information and another chance to drive them to the website. And then lastly, in this particular phase one, we're going to have printed materials. We'll print palm cards style materials so that they can be placed in public transit, so that staff can carry them to public meetings, so that as many people as possible can learn about the program. So let's go to the next slide, please. So phase one, obviously, we wanted to create a website that was attractive and is, not your typical transportation website. So we created, this logo we created for SAVSA. We created the website. We wanted it to be as informational as possible. So there's a couple of key elements that we pulled out of, SAVSA that will make it, as attractive a program to support as possible. And the first is that, it only costs people $1 a year. And they're removing up to 20,000 vehicles from city streets that are creating an eyesore for the city. I should mention before we go on that this is the latest version of the infographics and the website that we have. We go live with this campaign. I don't know if there's a board action or something that needs to happen today, but we're planning on going live with the campaign on Monday. So these graphics are continually being refined up until that day. More so than anything, it'll deal with spacing and font issues. It won't have anything to do with conceptual ideas or the actual content of the slides. So we wanted to create this website. We have a countdown clock for time until SAVSA expires. Because we wanted people to get a sense of urgency. So the first thing they see when they see the site is that, okay, well, there's a countdown clock here. Why is it counting down? It must be counting down to something serious. I want to scroll down and figure out what is so serious that it merits this countdown clock for when this thing will expire. So we're creating a little bit of a sense of urgency with the website that will psychologically have the user want to find out more about the program and hopefully really ingest the information that we've got coming up. We've designed the site to be user friendly and sleek. It's not a no offense to government entities, but it's not, a typical government website where you go and there's, block text and kind of the things that are, necessary to get all the information that, STA or other transportation agencies or other governmental agencies have to get out there. Let's go to the next slide. These are some components of the infographics that we'll have up on the website, and this will be the main focus of the site, is so that people can understand, easily, visually, how much they're paying and what they're getting from the program. The key components of the program being, it costs $1 a year through the vehicle registration fees. That it's removing 10,000 vehicles on average per year. And over the last couple of years, it's been 20,000 plus vehicles, which I think is a really important part of what to tell, the residents in order to support the program. When I first saw these figures, for example, I was taken aback that, it's only $1 per year for vehicle registration and they're towing 20,000 cars per year. To me, that statistic speaks volumes, and I think I'm getting an incredible return on investment for my $1 a year. So we wanted to make sure that the residents of Sacramento County also understood, because this is one of the things, not everybody can understand the benefit of county government or transportation agency, the services that they provide. But this is something where they can immediately see, if I pay this money, it'll get these cars off the street. It'll make my neighborhood nicer. So these are kind of the graphics that we're using to get that point across. You'll notice, you spend how much per year graphic. This, we want people to understand that, they're spending a lot on things that may not be necessary to them. $139 on Amazon, $120 for Netflix, $100 on Spotify. This only costs $1 per year. So we wanted to get that kind of comparison in there. And you'll see at every point, we say it's per year, because a lot of people aren't capable of thinking in such small dollar terms annually. They think $1 a month, $1 a week, $1 a day. $1 a year is revolutionary, and so we want to make sure that we really drive that point home. Additionally, we have a timeline here of the SAVSA program, including a 2022 date at which the program will go away. That graphic is placed underneath the infographics so that as the person absorbs more information about the program, they'll finally come to a point where they find out what the evolution of SAVSA is, and then that it is actually going away in June of 2022, which will hopefully cause them to want to continue the program and call STA and ask them to continue the program by any means necessary. All right, let's go to the next slide. So this is what we have for our quote unquote mystery campaign. And like I said, there's a little bit of a non-traditional campaign that we're doing here, but really, what we're trying to do is create an intrigue around SAVSA. We're treating SAVSA like a product in this regard. We've been, likely seen similar things that have been for apps, for consumer goods, for any number of things that is not related to transportation. We wanted to do something different, and we wanted to make sure that people visited the website. So the idea here is that we create this mystery around SAVSA. The great thing about SAVSA is that it's got this wonderful, name. It's an acronym that is kind of intriguing. And it could be a commercial product. It could be an app. We don't know, but we want people to go to the website to find out. The bad part about that is that nobody knows what it is, but the good part is that we've got this really interesting name to work with. And because nobody knows what it is, they're going to be more inclined to go to the website to find out more information. The color scheme here is our 2022 trending colors. The reason we do that is because we want as much engagement around the county as possible so one way to engage the consumer as much as possible is take it away from the typical white, black color scheme and go into a more, a more attractive color scheme, so that we're again mimicking that campaign that would be for the launch of a product, launch of an app, et cetera, so that if people knew that this was a transportation program, they're not likely to want to investigate more. But if we intrigue them enough where they think that this is something that is going to benefit their lives, or some trendy thing that they want to be a part of, that's what's going to drive them to the website. So let's go to the next slide. This is where the electronic billboards are going to be set up. There are 7 electronic billboards. Actually, there are 14. So each of these have 2 sides. There are 7 electronic billboards around Sacramento. We decided on not using 2 of them because one is at is on the I-80 corridor. That is basically commuters coming in probably from Placer County, and so we don't want to waste money on those folks. So these are ones, and you'll notice, they're still on commuter corridors, but they're all within the county. And so hopefully these are boards that are capturing through county traffic. They're capturing people on surface roads. They're in really high traffic areas. That's the one great thing about using the electronic billboards, is that we don't have to do any research about where the most high trafficked areas are. They already know that. That's why there's electronic billboards there in the first place. So that's what we've got. We've got as much coverage in the county as we can. And again, these are for every location that you see here. A board is on both sides. So on east, west, south, north facing. So we've got 10 boards total around the county. Let's go ahead to the next slide.
Madam Chair, before you leave that slide, this is Member Natoli.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Andrew, I just wanted to note that the billboard that's on the east side of Highway 99 in the northbound direction, it has both faces, one in the city just to the south of that. So I'm not sure which one this one is, but I know the county has allowance for a certain amount of time allocated. Obviously, we use it for messaging for a variety of public service types of announcements. And depending upon the nature of this advertising, I don't know how it would fit in that category. But since this doesn't happen for without some compensation to those folks we're renting space from, I didn't know if you were aware of that, and it might be best to talk with our public information officer about that. But we do have, as a part of that agreement on that sign, have some time and space. And again, this would be of a fairly short duration, relatively speaking. So it may be that that would factor into certainly the costs or defraying some of the costs of the renting space in addition to anything you might be doing on the other sites.
Terrific. I will work with STA staff and hopefully we can utilize that program. That'd be great, because that'll allow us to save money on the billboards that we can then use in other areas. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, our public information officer with the county is Kim Nava. And so Sabrina or Tim could assist, or Jennifer could assist you, and get my office likewise. But that may help a little bit. So thanks, Madam
We
Chair.
appreciate that. You should mention also that STA staff is currently looking into the possibility of subsidized and or complimentary ad space on Sacramento transit vehicles. As they, so we're also investigating that as possible use.
Okay.
So let's go to the next slide. So this is, I want to give you a preview of phase 2, and we should mention that because of the nature of our digital statistic, allocation or aggregation that we have nowadays, we're going to be able to get pretty good feedback relatively quickly on whether this campaign is working or not. Because of the statistics that we see on the website, we can say, okay, well, this is driving traffic to the website, this is not. So we have in our stable a number of different, outdoor advertising concepts, digital concepts that we can shift very quickly. I mean, because it's digital, we can have artwork in on, a Tuesday afternoon, and on Wednesday morning, it's changed to the billboard. So we're going to be relatively flexible. We know that we are dealing with a very short time frame, and obviously, when we're dealing with funds that are in the public trust, we want to make sure that we're utilizing those funds to the highest extent available. So if our phase one campaign is not driving enough traffic to the website, we're going to move on to phase two, and we're going to have a relatively short leash to do it. And we'll work with STA staff to kind of decide, when is the time to pull the trigger on the next phase. But this is kind of what we're thinking for phase two. Phase one is really about driving the messaging, or about driving traffic to the website, increasing the ID of the program, and make sure that people are aware of it. Phase two will be more about creating the body of the messaging, which is why you'll see here, what can $1 do for you? The time is running out, April 30th, 2022. You put a date like that up there, and people are going to think, all right, what's happening on April 30th? I better go to this website to see. This has been a kind of a time-tested method in consumer goods and public relations that we want to try to utilize for transportation as well. The second phase will also include digital advertising, as well as likely video production that we can place in OTT on the website, as well as other sites. And then the third part, I don't have a slide for this, but just informationally, and like I said, all of this is fluid. It's all flexible. So depending on the reaction that we get from part one, that might influence the direction of part two, which in turn will influence the direction of phase three. Phase three will really be to drive the messaging home. It'll be talking about a what if campaign. It'll be time driven. Time is running out. What if this program went away and you had to deal with 20,000 cars on the road? That'll be kind of the drive it home messaging that we have towards the end of the campaign. And I think if you go to the next slide, I think that concludes the actual presentation. I apologize, I talked way more than I was intending to, but I wanted you guys to have as much information as possible. I fell into the classic consultant trap. I meant to talk for a little bit, and I ended up talking for a long time. So I apologize for that. I'm happy to stand and answer any questions.
No worries. Thank you for that excellent presentation, Mr. Fields. That was outstanding. Any questions from directors? Questions or comments? I don't see any hands raised.
Director Miller?
Yes, Director Miller.
Thank you. Great presentation. I am driving, so I couldn't see any of the wonderful graphics. And I didn't hear a strategy on the ballot statement. Did you cover that, or could you, please?
I'm gonna leave that for somebody else. This is the public education campaign needs to be separated from the ballot statement in its entirety. So this is just about public education. It's not about getting people to vote, quote unquote, for anything. So I might let Jennifer answer that question.
Director Miller, could you give me more detail on the question that you're asking about the ballot statement?
Well, I was just curious, has it been written? And have we strategically talked about who'd be signing it, supporting it? And a follow-up question would be when is it due? And is there any organized opposition? And I don't think it's a time where we know that yet.
Yeah, the ballot, the measure has already been submitted and is already on the books for the June 7th ballot. It's going to be called Measure C.
Right, I got that much. Have we written the ballot statement with an argument for it?
No, there's been no argument for it or against it.
Yeah, we're not getting into the campaign part of all of that.
I get it. Okay, maybe I'm a little off of the agenda here, but okay, I'll save that for later.
No worries. There are no bad questions. Are there
just no answers?
No worries. Are there any other questions from our directors?
I do not see any hand raises in the queue.
Madam Chair.
Oh, and Director Natoli.
Director Natoli,
Yeah,
yes.
and maybe this is for council, maybe back to Steve's question. I think what he's referring to oftentimes on statewide initiatives, you'll see the text language, which is submitted by the entity, whether it's the state or some other method that gets on the ballot. And then there are opportunities for either those who would be supportive or opposed to submit measures. I don't know on a countywide measure whether that applies, but I think that was Steve's question, is that beyond the statement that describes what the measure would accomplish and and how it would be funded and so forth, is there opportunity? And again, that would be tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day, obviously, to submit if there was a process for that. But does that not apply, Bill, for county measures?
So what we've submitted so far, the ballot language, the ballot question, there is County Council's impartial analysis, which was also submitted, and then the County Board of Supervisors resolution is also going out as part of the notice today. I think that the registrar did. I have to go look at the email from the last couple of days, but I think she did give us a date for submitting any arguments in favor. And Jennifer, let me know if I'm right or wrong about that, but I think there was, and I don't think it's tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't think it's tomorrow.
So I'm going back to Chair seeing Alan. I don't know how to raise my hand on here. So
No worries.
Yes,
the old-fashioned way.
Yeah. Which I tend to do anyways. But yes, the argument for or against is applicable, and it has a different deadline. And per the elections office email, it is March 15th.
Okay, I guess that answers Steve's question and my point. And if it's appropriate, then do we know if there will be? We don't know if there'll be arguments against, but obviously this is sponsored by the entities that are members of SASFA, putting it before the voters. So, is there an intent to submit argument for?
Not that I'm aware of.
But there's an opportunity through March the 15th, so someone could, and I guess I would ask the question, maybe get back to Bill, Jennifer, can public entities, i.e. city council members, board of supervisors members, could they pen an argument in support of, if that's what they chose to do? I guess they could pen an argument against if they were so inclined as well, but that's not reflecting obviously what the member bodies actions were taken. So I think it goes back to Steve's question, Steve. I don't want to get ahead of you, but it seems to me that that's a very short window, but there is an opportunity, it sounds like, to actually put before the voters, beyond what's in the strict ballot measure language, resolution, and so forth, to actually put forward additional argument signed by, I think they allow up to 3 parties to sign that, if I'm not mistaken. So
I'll reach out
also,
to.
Would you be able to provide some guidance and with legal on what we can and cannot do?
Right. So we can't spend public funds. So if anyone's going to write a statement of advocacy, it can't be paid for by SAFSA or the county or any of the cities. I prefer to see it come from an independent person or group.
okay. And that's how that's how it would be funded as well, because obviously there's a cost associated with that as well. So to your point, Bill. Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you for those clarifying questions. Any other questions from directors?
I do not see any additional hand raises in the Zoom, and Director Natoli is not in queue to speak.
Any public comments?
There are no verbal public comments at this time for item number 12.
All right, well, this is just a receive and file item, unless directors felt so strongly otherwise. This is an excellent report, Mr. Fields, and thank you. I look forward to seeing this. All right, on to our next item, item 13, comments from authority members. I will take closing comments from anyone if you are so inclined. If not, I will move to adjourn.
I do not see any hand raises in the Zoom, and I do not have Director Natoli in queue to speak.
All right, any public comments?
There are currently no public comments for item number 13.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for a great meeting. And with that, we will adjourn. It is 2:41. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks, everybody.